You're standing on the deck, rod in hand, watching your line disappear into the blue. Then you feel it, that electric pull that tells you something big just took your bait. You get excited, thinking this could be the catch of a lifetime. But here's the problem. What if that fish on the end of your line is loaded with mercury? What if it's contaminated with PCBs that could harm your family? What if keeping it could cost you thousands in fines? Well, we're breaking down 7 fish you should never catch in 2026. Not just because they're endangered, but because they could seriously damage your health, your wallet, or push an entire species closer to extinction. Let's start with the fish that defines power in the ocean, but also has many hidden problems. The Atlantic bluefin tuna is built for dominance. It's fast, it's massive, and it can cross entire oceans without slowing down. Bluefin tuna are warm-blooded, which gives them incredible speed and endurance. They're capable of chasing prey across thousands of miles, and they live a long time. That combination, being their size, speed, and lifespan, is exactly what makes them dangerous to eat. As apex predators, bluefin tuna accumulate everything in the ocean over time, such as mercury, PCBs, and industrial pollutants. After the fish is cooked, the toxins don't just disappear. Instead, they move directly into the person eating it. That's why health agencies consistently warn against consuming large predatory fish, especially for children and pregnant women. But the health risk is only half of the story. Bluefin tuna were pushed to the edge of collapse during the industrial fishing boom of the 20th century. Stocks fell by an estimated 90% from historic levels. At the time, fishing pressure was relentless, and the fishery couldn't see what was happening beneath the surface. By the time regulations stepped in, the damage was already done. Today, bluefin tuna fisheries are among the most tightly regulated on Earth. Seasons open and close, size limits change, and quotas tighten or loosen depending on stock assessments. In many areas, a recreational harvest is effectively closed. In others, you're limited to 1 fish under strict conditions. So if you hook a bluefin tuna in 2026, you're not just dealing with a strong fish. You're dealing with a species still recovering from decades of overexploitation and a meat source that carries serious health warnings. Sometimes the smartest fishing decision is knowing when to let go. Some fish vanish loudly, others disappear so slowly that most people don't notice until it's too late. Orange ruffly doesn't look threatening. It doesn't fight like tuna, it doesn't carry a reputation. And that's exactly why it became one of the greatest conservation mistakes in fishing history. Orange ruffly tend to live in deep waters and far away from sunlight. They grow slowly and they live well over a century. What makes them especially vulnerable is reproduction. They don't begin reproducing until they're around 20 to 30 years old. So when commercial fishing discovered them in the 1970s, the catches looked sustainable at first. Boats hauled in massive numbers, markets filled, and everyone assumed the supply would last. But as you can guess, it didn't. Within a few decades, populations collapsed, spawning grounds were completely wiped out. And because orange ruffy live so long, recovery isn't measured in years, it's measured in generations. Deep sea trawling made things even worse. Those nets don't just catch fish, they flatten ancient coral and sponge ecosystems that may take centuries to recover, if they recover at all. On top of that, because these fish live so long, they typically accumulate high levels of mercury. Even today, many conservation groups recommend avoiding orange ruffy entirely, even when labeled sustainably harvested. This is a fish that taught us a hard lesson. Just because something exists deep in the ocean doesn't mean it's endless. The next fish isn't dangerous because of age or rarity, it's dangerous because of where it comes from. Shrimp is the most consumed seafood in the United States. That popularity hides a massive problem. Roughly 90% of shrimp consumed in the US is imported, often from overseas farms where regulations are weak or poorly enforced. These farms are crowded. Waste builds up quickly, and disease spreads super easily. To keep shrimp alive, many operations rely on antibiotics and chemicals that are banned or heavily restricted in the US aquaculture. Multiple studies and inspections have found imported shrimp contaminated with bacteria like Vibrio. And for those who don't know, Vibrio causes serious illness, as well as chemical residues that shouldn't be present in food. Here's the part most people will never know. The FDA inspects less than 2% of imported seafood, meaning most contamination is never detected. Shrimp farming is even known to destroy vast areas of mangrove forest, which are ecosystems that protect coastlines from erosion and storms. Once those mangroves are gone, the damage is often permanent. If you catch shrimp locally and follow regulations, that's one thing, but imported shrimp represents a health risk and an environmental cost most consumers never see. Next is a fish that once fed entire nations until we assumed it always would. Atlantic cod fed the world for centuries. Entire economies were built on it. Generations of fishermen relied on it. Then it collapsed. By the early 1990s, cod populations fell to a fraction of historic levels after centuries of heavy fishing. Modern technology played a major role, especially with sonar, GPS, and bottom trawling. Fish had nowhere left to hide. Even after moratoriums and decades of management, many cod stocks still haven't recovered. In 2026, cod fishing remains restricted or prohibited in many regions, with strict limits that change annually. Cod isn't just a fish anymore. It's a lesson in what happens when we believe the ocean can't run out. Some fish don't just disappear quietly. They're removed piece by piece. Sharks are built to dominate ecosystems. However, they are not built to recover quickly. Many species reproduce slowly, give birth to few offspring, and take years to mature. Great hammerheads are listed as critically endangered, with severe population declines. As apex predators, sharks accumulate extremely high mercury levels, making them unsafe to eat. But the greatest threat is the fin trade. Hammerhead fins are among the most valuable, driving targeted fishing even when the rest of the shark is discarded. More than half of hammerheads die during capture, even when released. In the US, selling or possessing shark fins is illegal, and most sharks should be released immediately. So if you hook a shark fin, the right thing to do is simply letting it go. Some fish don't just fight you, they quietly carry everything we've dumped into the water. American eel absorbs pollution like a sponge. They accumulate mercury, PCBs, flame retardants, and other industrial chemicals over their lifetime. Health advisories in some states recommend eating no more than one eel per year, and that is if you even eat one at all. Eels are also slow growing, but also heavily exploited. Global demands lead to illegal trade, especially for juvenile glass eels. This isn't a delicacy. It's decades of pollution stored in muscle. And finally, a fish so valuable that money nearly erased it from existence. Beluga sturgeon have existed for over 200 million years. They grow massive and even live for over a century, and don't mature until their mid-teens. Then, caviar changed everything. Beluga caviar created black markets that devastated populations. In some regions, numbers collapsed by over 90%. Because of this, importing beluga sturgeon or wild beluga caviar into the US is illegal. If someone offers you real beluga caviar, it's likely illegal. This is a huge example of how luxury is pushing species toward extinction. These 7 fish all tell the same story. Some of them are toxic, some of them are collapsing, and some are protected because we almost pushed them to extinction. In 2026, being a responsible angler isn't just about catching more fish. It's about knowing which ones to release. So before you keep a fish, ask yourself these 3 questions. Is it safe to eat? Is it legal to keep? And will the ocean still have it tomorrow? Because the water hasn't changed, but the consequences have.